We have our panel now. I'd really like to welcome to the stage Rachel Hall, Kamala Johal, Andy Beams, and Fiona Bewley. We're going to be talking about maximising reach into fragmented audiences over the next half hour, and I've got a fantastic lineup of speakers for you. To my immediate left is Fiona Bewley. She's head of UK sales at Captify. Then we have Rachel Hall. She's head of PMX Lift at Publicis Media. We have Kamala Johal. She's activation planning partner at Brainlabs. And far away from me, waving all the way from hello. We have Andy Beams, director of client partnerships for data for Samba TV. So welcome. We're going to just kick things off with a little bit of fun. Could you just tell me what you're watching very quickly, or what you're not? What platform and device?
Sure. Hi, everyone. This was a difficult one. It's like, do I sound cool? Do I be me? So I'm watching Great British Bake Off. It is the only show that I ever watch on schedule. And clockwork, 7 o'clock on a... 7 o'clock? Right? Yeah, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Like clockwork, and that's the only thing I ever watch. So always watching it on my smart TV at home. That's how I consume my TV.
Yeah, there's a potential to overshare here, isn't there? I'm ashamed of some of my viewing, frankly. I think I've got 2 kids, so we've got every app going, all the subscriptions, Sky, Netflix, Disney, Apple. I've got a Hey You subscription because I like to watch a bit of Housewives. But generally at the moment I'm watching The Bear, which I think we all said we were watching. And I'm now watching Boiling Point, the sort of UK version, but it's a bit stressful. So I've also just been watching The Beckhams as well to try and dilute it a bit.
I'm always on high for Below Deck.
There we go.
Told you there'd be someone.
Yeah, definitely oversharing.
I'm also watching The Beckhams, so I'm 1 episode in, so I'm hooked. Jury's still out, but it's probably the only programme that I've managed to find that me and my partner have common ground to watch, so I'm embracing it.
Very much a streaming household over here. I think the Sky subscription got cancelled a couple of years ago, so everything is on a Fire Stick, fully connected. Very little broadcaster content. I only really thought about this recently. It's like, sure, I watch loads of. No, I don't. No, it's never live and very not that much broadcaster. Although the exception to that is, I'm going to agree with Rachel here. Boiling Point, excellent. Incredibly stressful.
Yes.
My wife has to give like a 3-day break between episodes because she needs to recover from it. But it's very, very good to watch that. The other thing I need to find some time to binge, but the new series of Always Sunny in Philadelphia is on Netflix. Been out in the States for like a month, and I've been waiting for it, so I need to catch up on that.
I feel they're all way better than what I watch. No, actually, I watched the Big Brother launch on ITV.
Very nice.
Yep. Yeah. I think I'll go on it next year. So let's kick things off. Andy, I'm going to start with you. Actually, can you just tell us a little bit about? Obviously, we're here to talk about maximising reach into fragmented audiences. Can you just tell us about how you or how the people in the room can find that Goldilocks blend between reach and frequency?
I think it was that phrase Goldilocks I picked up when I first saw the question. And I kind of want to challenge the phrasing of the question because it's quite presumptive. The perfect blend, not too much, not too little, what's just the right amount. And feels like we all should be in agreement on what that is with the question, but it's not going to be the same for any given client, any given brief, any given outcome they want to measure. So it becomes so subjective to the scenario. If you look at an addressable campaign, the audience might be really small. So you'd saturate the reach really quickly, and then the client needs to ask, do they want to own that audience with extra frequency? Do they want high mental availability and own it, or do they just limit their budget? Maybe that's what they want because it's a small budget, but again, it's a factor. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you might have some big CPG kind of reach building type brands that can't get what they want in TV because the reach curve saturates it quickly, and the incremental points are going to cost an absolute fortune relative to the first whatever percentage that they've got. So how they get the next bit becomes challenging. So there's one hand, you've got people that will oversaturate on that frequency. Another one that go, we can't get what we need, so we need to look at how we buy that in other channels, AV or otherwise. It becomes very subjective in its definition. I think the important thing with it is being able to understand. I just talked about all these different factors, made it sound really simple, but understanding where that reach curve is, when it flattens, what the frequency looks like, be able to understand that and know at what point is TV done its job for the brief, and other medias and other, maybe it's into AVOD and BVOD on TV broadly. But if you've got the data to look at that, then you can react to it, and that becomes fundamental to any of that stuff. But
Kamala, is it as subjective as Andy says, or are you just whacking out the same media plan for every client?
Well, I've got to say that I'm not. So yeah, I mean, I agree that it's, actually it's quite misleading. There isn't, in reality, every campaign will have its own Goldilocks blend. Broadly speaking, for brand awareness, we were looking at higher reach, scale, getting the message out there. Whereas for consideration, it's higher frequency, building those touch points in the messy middle when consumers are kind of exploring and evaluating. I think kind of one of the things that, reach and frequency is an important input at Brainlabs, but we are much more interested in what's the kind of optimal blend to drive incrementality and business outcomes for clients. So we use a proprietary tool called GeoBoost internally, which allows us to actually understand with statistical significance what level of spend of addressable TV in the upper funnel is driving sales and revenue for client. And I think that's where it gets really interesting in terms of experimentation.
We've heard a lot this morning about reduced broadcast linear consumption. Are you seeing AVOD filling any of the gaps?
So yes, but most importantly, definitely alongside linear. So it's definitely a supplementary addition. I know Casey was talking about this, holistic approach to all AV, but I think from a Publicis point of view, a lot of our clients, 30, 40 plus are activating across our AVOD products because they're understanding that linear won't reach everyone and can't reach everyone, and so at that point we need to go and start activating BVOD and other VOD platforms. All the barbell view data is telling us that there's not that crossover between BVODs and other video platforms, and we're using ACR technology to help measure clients' performance in that space. So when we activate AVOD, typically we'd be seeing anything between 6 and 12% incrementality, and so that's really important to ensure. Again, when you're talking to clients about KPIs and the audiences they're trying to reach, it might be that we're at inflection points in terms of some clients actually starting with those more addressable segments that we're talking about because they can start to get scale. And I think, there's a lot of conversation around the scalability of sort of deterministic audiences and ID solutions. But I think we're proving out, certainly at Publicis, that when we activate our brands and our clients' brands in these spaces, we're getting incremental reach that they wouldn't be delivering from linear. But none of it's particularly straightforward and easy, as Andy said.
Is other ways to make it easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and hopefully that's what I try and do at Publicis. Obviously, we're building products that help clients fix some of their marketing solutions and challenges, but that will be everything from helping AV buyers understand more about data-driven targeting from a linear point of view or in CTV. It's making sure that we're sharing frequently asked questions and educating and talking to clients about the need to use different media and different channels. So it isn't always straightforward, but I think one of the focuses, certainly for us, has been making sure that when we're targeting, that we're using sort of one unified approach to targeting. Because I think if clients and advertisers are activating across multiple platforms, the danger is that you might build an auto intenders or a luxury traveller segment in 4 different ways using lots of different types of third-party data, for example. So at least, whilst we've got the challenges we've got from a measurement point of view, at least if we're going into that ecosystem with one unified approach to targeting, we're kind of getting ourselves halfway there.
Is that a kind of more simplistic approach that you'd take?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The way, I guess, from our perspective that we see it, it all starts with the data. And that's what's so exciting, is that there's so many types of data now that are available across the big screen. And there's, solutions like PMX Lift and Finecast and 1AV at IPG, etc., that are trying to understand all of these types of data, but which are the best data sets to actually pull intelligence from to simplify how we're reaching those kind of luxury audiences or those auto intenders. So whether that's, your postcode data, your first-party kind of identifiers, search data, which is what Captify kind of specialize in, understanding behaviors and intent and mindsets. There's so much out there. The way that we can make it simple is if we use, I guess, data sets that are easy to understand to build a unified kind of solution and then target through those kind of, simple sources of truth, and execute that across different audiences.
I want to come back to you on that in a minute, actually, about the kind of technologies that we can use. But first, Kamala, I just wanted to come to you. Are you Where else are you seeing the contributions from to make up for that broadcast linear decline? Is it in addressable TV to get that incremental reach?
Yeah, we've seen, I think similar to what Rachel just said, we've seen significant uplift from shifting budgets from linear into addressable TV around kind of a 7% percentage points. So quite similar to Publicis. And I think, in terms of just that technology point, we're actually leveraging a partner in this space called Brainlabs, who actually offer kind of an AI-based addressable TV platform that allows us to activate across kind of the holistic connected TV landscape, and actually have that kind of unifying approach using kind of postcode data. But I think probably what's quite interesting, Rachel mentioned ACR technology. I think for broader audiences, actually building that incremental reach through automatic content recognition, understanding who's seen your ad and at what frequency, and being able to retarget kind of lighter viewers is how we would approach that kind of broader audience. And then I think where it gets really interesting is when we start to look at more granular and narrow audiences. And one of the things that we're kind of leveraging at Brainlabs is data partners to do that. So the likes of Nectar Data, dunnhumby, Boots Data. Actually, one kind of partnership we ran recently for a beauty client was to use Boots Advantage card data, so the kind of 14 million shoppers, and actually target kind of expert skincare buyers. So it gets quite interesting, the trade-off between kind of broad audiences for incremental reach versus narrow.
Can I ask a question to you, the agency point of view? So that when you're quoting those uplift figures, incrementality, are they broadly just naturally buying AVOD, BVOD, and that's the natural incrementality you find, or the campaigns targeted specifically using data sets, looking at geo-distribution of linear campaigns, identifying weak spots?
So, I mean, there's two things I'd say. One is that those uplifts are very much dependent on the advertiser, the audience that they're buying, and how much they're investing in linear, right? Because they're going to be reaching, if they're investing millions of pounds in linear, they're going to hit that reach curve a lot earlier, and therefore need to find their audience elsewhere. In terms of those percentages, I think it's predominantly our clients are using either bespoke segments, but they've still got to be scalable and sizable. So I would say that they're looking for in-market purchasers. So you might have a linear approach that is ABC1 adults because you're trying to sell cars, but then you're using some of the advanced data analytics to look at electric vehicle users or those that are buying an SUV. So I would say it's sometimes a blend, because I do believe that actually you can probably use some broader measures from an AVOD point of view or BVOD point of view, but it's generally a blend. And I think as long as those audiences, in-market audiences, are scalable, then actually using the two together is kind of the way that we're getting optimal results for our clients. But the only other thing I was going to say as well is using data-driven linear as well. So I think via Tech Edge, we're using our Epsilon audiences, which is what powers our products, via our linear feeds as well. So it's not just about addressability only in video and addressable. It's also in linear as well, that we can move away from those 12 broad barb audiences into electric vehicle purchasers or into luxury travellers.
I'd like to find out what we can do to maybe help avoid over-saturating some households. So can you tell us about some of the processes you're using?
Yeah. So from our perspective, and I'm very excited that this is happening this week, not last week, because there's a couple of exciting partnerships that we can actually talk about with this. So again, starting with the data, we use our search intelligence to understand audiences, and we're applying that now and amplifying that through really brilliant broadcasters, so Sky and ITV. So Sky AdSmart, what we're doing with them is we are working with our search intelligence and their postcodes to overlay kind of search intent segments across their postcodes. So understanding where certain search areas kind of index higher across postcodes. So for example, electric vehicles, that we were saying, which are the segments that are more likely to be searching around that, and then that allows the broadcaster to target more efficiently across their suite. Second to that is kind of contextual targeting. So we have partnered with ITV, which is really exciting. This came out this week. And essentially what we're doing is our search intelligence is powering their automated contextual targeting tool. So what we're doing is we are contextually classifying TV programs and understanding kind of the key audience moments and themes, and even down to kind of sentiment and emotion, to allow brands to target based on those areas contextually. So we're using kind of postcode, or we're using contextual, kind of future-proofed mechanisms for targeting. And the end kind of, I guess the end product of that and the improvement of that is that we are then using, I guess we're improving the viewer's end goal, which is the ad that they're seeing. We're making sure that we're resonating advertising with the correct viewer based on that.
Seems like postcodes are having a bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say that's one of the things we were talking about beforehand in terms of how geo kind of feeds into that stuff, especially from a linear TV point of view. So we look at the over under saturation bit. Let's give context for a second. Right? So Samba put out a piece of research in the summer, I think, state of viewership. You'll find it. It's excellent. But we looked at the linear impressions. So the bottom 50% of linear households saw 8% of the linear impressions. The top 50% of households saw 92% of those linear impressions. So there's an over and under saturation piece going on. It's just the divide is so clear, which is obviously like, okay, that's where we are. That's the state of fragmented audiences. But then when the postcode piece fits into this, it's okay, well, how do we react to that? How do we deal with that? That's kind of my question. I was interested in your incrementality stuff. Like a lot of the work we see customers do today is using geo-distribution of a linear campaign, for example, and go, well, we can see the areas that are under-indexing for exposure to that. We know they're not, and they should be exposed. We want them to be exposed to them, and they're not. How do we take those postcodes and buy other media, whether it's AV or otherwise, in those channels? And at the same time, how do you take the top 20% and go, enough, they've seen it enough, let's suppress that for the rest of our media campaign, because otherwise we're going to go beyond the point of desirable reach and frequency, that Goldilocks point. How do we use those postcodes now? Granular analysis, I think we've all talked about postcodes here. The application of that to answer that challenge, I think, becomes really important.
Yeah. And just to give an example of also a campaign that we're running with the UK government at the moment for Ministry of Justice, we are understanding where there are searches for kind of recruitment and job seeking, and overlaying that at a postcode level to say these are kind of the postcodes that we're seeing a kind of high in like uptick in people searching around recruitment. And I know there's so many different data layers that we are now applying across postcodes to really understand how to granularly target or be more precise in our targeting, and that is again adding to that kind of incrementality piece.
Talking about suppression, how are we going to be reducing waste? What waste can we eliminate over the next 2 years?
I think waste is an interesting one. I'm not sure, I mean, none of us have got a crystal ball, right? And so I'm not even going to try and quantify the answer to that. But what it does feel like is we're getting closer to be able to achieve that kind of thing. It's not a pipe dream. The targeting tools we just talked about, the measurement tools that are coming in, how big data is feeding into the TV landscape in a way it wasn't 5 years ago, I think that will make a big difference between how we go. Like, let's look at the States. Someone said on the last panel, I think, the States being 2 years ahead of us. So let's look at the States as a bellwether for what might come to Europe. Nielsen have just brought smart TV data into their panel. They've acknowledged that the audience panel piece is small and has some limitations, and they want to bring stuff in. That's happening in the States. Like, that kind of big data coming over to UK and Europe is kind of inevitable. That is a big piece. And in fact, on the measurement piece, this is literally hot off the press. We put this out about an hour ago. So ISBAR, Project Origin, have just announced they're looking at how they bring Samba's smart TV data into cross-media measurement. So that kind of big data coming into TV and cross-media video type measurement becomes absolutely huge. The more we understand that, the more it's in blends of different data sets, because I don't think there's any single source that will solve this on their own. It's going to be some industry collaboration going on here, otherwise it's going to go nowhere. That gets us closer to being able to achieve that kind of thing. Once we understand it and the data points are fused and they're together and the tools are in the hands of the right people, we can work on that elimination of waste.
And understand, what a client or an advertiser would deem as waste as well. I mean, if you're building a 3-year business and you're trying to affect consideration and brand awareness in the long term, then that isn't waste. That's building your consumer for 2 or 3 years' time. So I think, Channel 4 were talking earlier about it's the right blend, that the metrics are going to help us get there, but advertisers still need to be thinking about what are their long-term and short-term goals, because they still need some breadth and linear and, using linear for everything that is good for also fast and cost-effective reach, but underpinned then with in-market addressable segments that help them drive customers tomorrow and next month as opposed to in 3 years' time.
There's always got a rather negative sentiment, but there's
It
good,
does,
there's
I
good
think
waste,
so.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we can, just to add on that, we talk about cost efficiency and making sure we're targeting the right people, but if we're wasting less, it's also from an emissions perspective. And I think, excuse me, as a industry, we are really kind of aiming to reduce our carbon footprint across the entire kind of ecosystem. So an optimized targeting strategy should, in turn, also kind of minimize the waste across that perspective.
I know you mentioned cross-media measurement. Kamala, I don't know if you wanted to jump in on the waste point, but I'd love to talk about measuring holistically across channels. So Kamala, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about how you're planning AV, holistically.
Yeah, it's linked to the waste point, definitely. I think it's definitely a question that a lot of agencies are grappling with at the moment. The way that we think about AV holistically at Brainlabs is based on kind of 3 core principles: connected, predictive, and relevant. So connected in how we use data to allocate budget to each channel. So we have an AV optimizer tool which allows us to kind of maximize with the total budget attentive and effective reach across AV. So very much kind of reflecting how consumers consume video through the funnel. The second is around predictive, so where we can buy in a consolidated way, which I know is tricky in this landscape. We use very much leaning into kind of AI and machine learning, so we kind of build custom algorithms for clients to be able to better predict the right audience and inventory to go after across AV, including connected TV. So we did actually a test with Google recently across their kind of video, YouTube and connected TV inventory, and saw that I think quite often people think about predictive kind of models for conversion activity, but this actually saw 100% increase in unique reach from an awareness perspective, which was really interesting, and a 50% reduction in the cost per unique user. And that wasn't just linear metrics, also translated to kind of 10% brand lift as well. So the second is predictive, and then the third is relevant. So we very much try and think about how do we use live data to inform our creative messaging across all AV channels at scale. So we tap into kind of TikTok hashtag data, Instagram data, SEO data to understand what are the kind of trending topics that are coming up, and then we'll generate responsive creative based on that and scale that, not just against kind of standard video formats, but also the big screen as well. So it's all about how do we kind of own that conversation before it becomes saturated.
Rachel, on the measurement piece, what are you looking to do with clients? What does that measurement piece look like to you in the future?
Yeah. So certainly Barb Sieve Light Origin, as we've talked about, making strides in the right direction. But I kind of think, as with any super complex landscape, that literally every day you open your campaign or your future leaders, and you sit there thinking, oh my God, Amazon are doing this now, and Disney Plus are doing that. It's changing so quickly that measurement is always going to lag behind something that's evolving so fast. But I think our focus has again been on ensuring that we are starting with an audience approach, and then in the absence of any macro sort of cross-media, cross-video industry standard, everybody here sounds as though they're trying to fill those gaps, and that might be ACR, it might be econometrics, it might be brand lift studies if they're useful for clients that are looking at consideration and awareness. But I don't think there's anything that unites us. I think we're all probably trying to build the best we can in the interim as some of these solutions evolve. But I think the other thing I would say from a reporting point of view certainly is, as we shift away from broad audiences, certainly in the addressable world, and you start buying addressable segments, then we need to report back on addressable segments and move away from the sort of all-adult Barb audience approach to ensure that we're able to talk to our clients about the effectiveness of those segments. So not straightforward and idealistic that we would all be sitting in a sort of finished world where we could plug in a brand spend and an audience and it would populate a reach and frequency curve that would allow us to, drive better sales for our clients.
I think what's interesting about TV measurement now is how much what we can measure has changed in TV. Like the fact that there's IP-delivered TV suddenly makes it this digital medium, because you kind of pick up what can be measured. For linear, I'm not talking about VOD, I'm talking about linear television being IP-delivered, and then kind of the hook and the metrics that come from that. Because you're going to get some brands that are always going to be broadcast, reach building, fame building, that's what TV's for them, right? So they want to measure incrementality to make sure they've got the reach. They want to measure brand health metrics to make sure it's doing that kind of job. But TV, because of the addressability, because of the IP nature and the targeting, the measurements coming, it's attracting different types of advertisers that wouldn't traditionally have been there.
Yeah.
So the fact that there are more DR measurement type metrics available, like website visits and conversions based off a linear exposure, attracts a different advertiser. Now, maybe brand to brand, or campaign to campaign, at least the same advertiser might want to cover all of those, but it feels broadly, maybe I'm generalising here, but broadly like there are two different types of advertisers using TV for slightly different things and wanting to measure different outcomes. So what it's about, what can we measure, and that's changed, what do we want to measure, and then working from that point, because those data points are now available. They can measure those things, and they couldn't previously. So measurement, just, this question was posed 5 years ago. I think some of the things we just mentioned wouldn't have come up.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things that we're doing at Brainlabs is kind of doing a lot of correlation analysis to understand with the kind of reach metrics that we're seeing from addressable, how does that correlate with website visits, as you said, and sales and revenue uplift?
So we've got time for a couple of questions before we wrap up. I've got one more, but I wanted to get to the floor first. Anybody got a question? No. Okay, so one quick one. Obviously, we've seen a growing percentage of peak viewing consumption is now addressable. What does this mean for TV in the future? Fiona, if you would like to.
Yeah. I must say, it almost feels like I've been invited to have lunch with the cool kids. It's been a long time that we've been talking to online video partners, display partners, and the fact that now addressable VOD has become so kind of inclusive of so much of the rest of the industry is a really exciting time for us to sit and collaborate and really understand ways in which we can drive better reach to the right audiences, find the right audiences, execute on them, and measure. And I think there's probably going to be a lot more of these types of panels where there's kind of very different people in the room that maybe wouldn't have been sitting and having a conversation a few years ago. And I think it's just a very exciting time to see how it kind of progresses.
And if you do want more of those panels, come to the Future of TV Advertising, 5th, 6th December, King's Place. This has been absolutely fantastic.
Just to add one quick thing on that, it feels quite a timely question around addressability, because I know everyone saw the second ITV plug's got up here, not even in the room, I don't think. ITV announced yesterday that they are a bunch of their UV boxes, they're launching a couple of million households of addressable TV. So the fact that the ITV and Sky add smart addressability, this will grow over time. This is still early days. I think that will become apparent in a few years' time. But the level of addressable inventory coming into the market becomes super interesting from a targeting point of view, but it will add more measurement challenges. When you suddenly got 10, 20 different potential variant ad spots, ad creatives in one spot, having the data to measure that, because small panels won't necessarily get you're going to get into a zero-rated spot conversation with some of the smaller channels, it opens up new challenges for measurement. So there's a whole bunch of massive positives from it. I think we've got to have one eye on planning for that future, because this is step one.
Yeah.
We've got to make sure that as an industry we're covered for what the next couple of years look like from that perspective. We've
got to wrap up, but very first, want to just go down the line. What to you is going to be the key driver for the future of AV? Andy, do you want to start?
Measurement.
I think creative has got a massive impact on just generally over media. It's undervalued.
I'm going to say technology advancements to help us do all of that.
I'll stick to what I said before. I think collaboration from everyone involved in the TV world.
Brilliant. Well, please put your hands together